everybody always asks how. How the heck am I affording to move to a new country every single month, travel full time? And I've been doing this for almost 3 years now, and I think it really boils down to like 3 key advantages that I had, but I think the third one everybody kind of has, like if they want it. So we'll get there, but I'm kind of just going to give you that full transparency, tell you about how much money I actually left the US with, what jobs we've held like in between, how we've managed to make money, where we're at now, what the plan is, all that good stuff. So I'll kind of give you like a full breakdown of the numbers when I talk about the second advantage, but none of that's really going to matter without the context of the first advantage. And the first advantage really has a couple of parts that are important to understand. Obviously, I'm from the US, and that affords me a lot of privileges. Huge advantage, right? The passport is really strong, allows me to get into most of these countries. I have really strong currency, you know, when traveling around the world. I have a US education. Like, there's so many advantages just being a US citizen, and I fully recognize that, and I'm so appreciative for like all the opportunities that I have because of it. But one of like the key pieces to the first advantage was that I was actually really bad with money initially, and then figured out how to be really good with it. And that took place like during college. Not that I actually learned it at college, but I took out a ton of loans. I was like $32,000 in debt when I was getting ready to graduate college, and I couldn't actually accept the job that I wanted to because I wasn't gonna have enough money to pay my loans back. I was actually gonna default on the loans. So I realized, oh man, I've gotta get out of debt. I need to understand money. I need to become financially literate. And that kind of entered the whole like side hustle phase of my life. Like, I sold my car. I was doing every odd job you could imagine. I was donating plasma like 3 times a week, throwing every dollar that I could like straight at the loans, and I was able to pay it off within like a year. And going through that weird period really laid the framework for like what allowed us to be successful while doing all of the rest of this stuff. So after the college, like, yes, Sarah and I worked a regular job for about a year, and we did save up a lot of money. So we'll fast forward to the point of we were just getting ready to jump, and we had saved up somewhere in the ballpark of, I think it was about like $17,000, which is no small amount of money. And that's how much we like went into this with, saying, okay, this is how much money we have. We did have a little bit more in retirement accounts that, you know, we couldn't really access, like be penalized. So 16 to 17,000 was how much we really started this journey with. And this is kind of where that second key advantage comes into play, which is that it was really easy for us to separate from our lives. And what I mean by that is, we were just renting a place. So it just meant waiting for our lease to be up, and that was when we were jumping. So that's actually how like we planned this whole thing. We didn't really own much in our apartment. We sold everything else. Like I said, I had already sold my car to pay off all the debt. So we just didn't really have anything that like was holding us back in the US financially. It was very easy to just pick up and go. And it was at that point that that first advantage of having that framework, that solid financial understanding really came into play, because during the first few months of travel, we were pretty good at like keeping to a low budget. So in those first few months, here's like where we're actually going to get into the numbers. Our first place we started in Croatia, we rented an Airbnb for a full month. That's how we typically do it, because it's a lot cheaper to do, and we're not going to get into all like the travel hacks around that today. But the place in Croatia where we started, we spent $993.29. That was our monthly rent for that place in Croatia. The next month in Budapest, it was actually lower, $873.61. Then it was $828.30 in Prague. So as you could see, like, we were able to pick destinations that fit within our budget, because we were like, okay, $15,000, $16,000 to like start all this with. That's not an insignificant amount of money, but it will disappear quickly. So we just kind of jumped and said, we're gonna figure this out as we go. So we really, for the first like 6-7 months of this journey, would probably be classified as budget travelers. We didn't feel like budget travelers like at the time. Looking back, we definitely, you know, see that, but it was just making sure that we were sticking within a region, because people typically are like, wait, what about flights? Flights are really expensive. And yes, they can be, but guess what? If you're in Croatia and then going to Hungary and then going to, you know, the Czech Republic, all of that can be done by train, and you're not having to spend $500 on a flight. Instead, you might be paying like $80 to $150 on a train ticket. So that just really helped us make sure that we weren't blowing through all of our money, and that it was lasting as long as it could. But obviously you get to a point where the money starts to run out, right? And that did happen to us about 6-7 months into the journey, and we're like, hey, it's time to make something happen, time to figure this out. And our like short-term solution was something called user testing. We were just looking for a way to make money online, and it was one of those websites where like you take surveys and you get paid. And I am not recommending that any of you do it. There are probably much better ways to make money online, but it's what we did. So we would kind of sit there for a couple hours a day and just say, hey, let's take some surveys and see what kind of money we could make. And we were typically averaging between like $350 to $450 per month. So again, not a get rich quick scheme at all, certainly far from it. But at the time, $350, $450 a month each was like huge to us. We're like, hey, if we're each making $450 a month on this thing, that's $900. Like, that's about how much we've spent on the Airbnbs for the month. Like, that is huge money to us, especially because like our daily budget, we really were like keeping our costs down. Like, I think when we started in Croatia, we were doing something like, I don't know, maybe like $20 a day all in, like groceries, excursions, like everything that you could do, we were trying to do for like under $20. But the user testing really like opened the door for us because we're like, okay, now we at least have some money coming in. Money isn't just being drained constantly. But obviously that wasn't really the full-time fix either. It wasn't until about April of the following year when I ended up finding a remote job. And this job paid me pretty well. Like, I had a base pay of like $80,000, which I recognize is great money. And I was fortunate enough where they were totally fine with me working from anywhere in the world. So I worked wherever we wanted, but that did present some other types of challenges. Like, hey, there are now like 8 hours a day where you actually have to be working, right? Well, it's easy if you're like in a place like Mexico where the hours align. When you're in Europe, it changed it a little bit because it was like, okay, now our mornings and early afternoons, that's for sightseeing, and then like afternoons and evenings, I'm working because that's US hours. Asia was a whole nother mistake. I probably shouldn't have spent time in Asia. That meant starting work at like, I think like 9 something p.m. and working through 5 a.m. Wouldn't recommend. But yeah, it presented its own set of challenges, but an $80,000 base, like that was life-changing money for us. That really shifted how we viewed things and kind of how we traveled. So we ended up doing that, and maybe another 6-7 months later, Sarah ended up actually finding a remote position. So we kind of doubled down on both working remotely, and we were living that lifestyle for a while. At that point, our monthly spend definitely crept up. Like, we stopped spending about $800 to $900 on Airbnbs, and we're more in that like $2,000, sometimes $2,500 range. And a lot of that was because things got more expensive as the world started opening back up for travel after the pandemic. So nowadays it's probably, like I said, that $2,000 to maybe $2,500 on the Airbnb. When we fly, we still fly economy, back row, as cheap as we can possibly do it. $266 a month on healthcare. That allows us to be covered anywhere in the world. So we have global healthcare coverage, but other than that, we don't really have those monthly expenses. And then I'd say in general right now, we try to spend about $50 a day as our budget. So that would break down to around the $1,500 mark per month. And within that, that'll squeeze groceries, that will squeeze excursions, day trips, kind of any of the stuff that we're gonna do when we travel. So on an average month, I'd say somewhere around like maybe the 4,000 range, which that'd be about $48,000 a year. But unfortunately, that came to an end in November when I was laid off from that company. So now I'm doing this actually full-time. This is how I'm making money, are these YouTube videos. You'll notice that there's now been a video every single week, where for the last few years, I've been wildly inconsistent because I've had to prioritize what was actually paying me. Now, luckily, we're in this kind of nice balance where Sarah does still have her remote work position, so she is doing that, and we are surviving off of some of that income, as well as a little bit that we're making from YouTube right now. But I think this leads into the third key advantage, which, if you'll notice, everything I've said here, like, I never at any point was making like some obscene amount of money. Again, 80,000 is very, very good money, but we were never making like a crazy amount of money. We're not doing anything particularly special. What I really think it is that everybody really can have is we've just switched our expenses. Think about it this way. For you, you're probably paying either rent or a mortgage. If you're a mortgage, congratulations on owning a house. I don't know how you do it. But if you have a rent or mortgage payment, we just traded that for Airbnb payments. you probably have a car or some other form of public transportation. We've taken those expenses and just flipped it for the occasional flight or train ride. And the rest of travel, which a lot of people perceive to be expensive, which it certainly can be. The average tourist who is traveling, maybe spending a week on vacation, and they're going to try to ball out when they're there. That's not us, right? We're spending a month in each place, so we really live like locals. Yes, we eat out a lot, but we also shop at grocery stores. We go to local markets. We don't always stay right in the heart of the action. We live local lifestyles, and that really allows us to keep our costs down in ways that most travelers don't have the opportunity to do when they're only visiting a place for a couple days, maybe a week. So all of that really makes this much easier for us. So again, that third advantage is just, can you psychologically get your brain around saying, hey, I don't have rent anymore, it's an Airbnb. I don't have a car payment anymore, it's now a flight. And I don't mean to mislead you. There are lots of other hoops to jump through, but you're just trading the hoops, right? Like, you probably jump through hoops in your day-to-day life all the time. I'm doing it, it's a different set of hoops, but we both have hoops. It's just kind of deciding which hoops do you want to actually jump through. But if you want to learn more about like the thought process of actually us leaving and why we're doing it, you can watch this video right here and let me know if there's anything that I left out that you want to know about. Happy to fill you in on any questions that you have. But thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.